The sirens were loud, screaming across the sky like angry ghosts. Vera ran to the edge of the tower, her small hands shaking. Everyone was shouting the same words again and again. They caught one, they caught a human in her 12 cycles of life. Vera had never seen a human before, but she had heard the stories. They were monsters. Wild creatures from a broken planet. They had no fear, no kindness, only hunger and rage. They eat us. Her older brother once told her, they don't even cook us. Just bite and chew. Vera never forgot that. That night she couldn't sleep, and even now. Her legs trembled as she walked with the others toward the prisoner block. Everyone wanted to see the human, the beast, the killer. She stayed near the back. Her head low, heart pounding. But when the crowd reached the glass cell, hey, even she looked up. And what she saw confused her. He was sitting on the cold floor, arms behind his back, eyes calm. His skin was light. His hair short and messy. He was breathing slowly. Not roaring or fighting. He didn't look like a monster. The guards shouted, poked sticks through the bars, threw food at him. But the human didn't move. He just watched them with sad eyes, like he was tired of something they couldn't understand. Days passed, and Vera kept returning, hiding behind the shadows of the wall. The other aliens laughed, threw stones, said rude things, but the human stayed silent, never angry, never violent. It made Vera curious, and a little brave, one evening. When the sky was dark orange and the guards were gone, she walked closer. She didn't know why. Maybe she wanted to see the beast up close. Maybe she wanted to prove to herself that he was just pretending. She stepped too close, and something slipped from her pouch, a small, glowing memory stone. It rolled on the floor and stopped right near the human's foot. She gasped, afraid he would take it, crush it, or eat it. Instead, he looked at it, then looked at her, and then, very slowly, he picked it up and slid it toward the bars, holding it in his hand. Vera didn't move, her breath frozen. Then he spoke, soft and clear. You dropped this. She didn't understand every word, but the tone was gentle, not angry, not hungry. Vera stepped forward, grabbed the stone from his hand, and ran away. She didn't sleep that night, her head full of questions, her chest full of strange feelings. The next day, she returned, and this time she stood closer. The human looked at her and nodded, but said nothing. She looked at the guards. They were far, busy, distracted. So she spoke, her voice small. You? Not like stories. The human smiled for the first time. No, he said, I'm not. His name was Mason. He came from a place called Earth, which was full of water, trees, animals, and music. He told her about oceans bigger than cities, birds that sang, and machines that flew in the sky. It all sounded like fantasy to her, like something from a child's dream. Why, angry? She asked one day. I would be, if I was trapped. He looked at the ceiling and said, because anger makes them win, kindness makes them afraid. She didn't understand at first, but every time she came, he spoke kindly, asked about her life, told stories, made her laugh. Slowly, the fear inside her began to shrink. And something else grew, trust. But one night, something changed. The alarms rang again, louder than before. Lights flashed red, and the guards shouted. The human escaped. Someone screamed, check the cells. Vera rushed to the block, heart racing. Had he really escaped? Did he finally become the monster she was told about? She reached the glass cell and stopped. He was still there, sitting calmly, hands folded. Looking at the chaos with tired eyes, the guards stared at him. Confused and afraid, he hadn't moved, and yet their systems were failing. The lights were flickering, doors were unlocked, and security drones were falling from the sky. How? Vera looked at him, and he looked back at her. He smiled again. But this time, the smile felt different, stronger, deeper. He leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "This place doesn't need escape. It needs change." Vera stood frozen, mind full of questions she couldn't ask. Who was this human? What was he really doing here? And most important of all, the rain on Vera's homeworld didn't fall like it did in stories. It hummed, soft, silver, and strange, like little songs landing on metal rooftops. That night, as it rained, Vera couldn't sleep. The human was still in his cell. He hadn't escaped, hadn't broken anything, hadn't screamed or fought. Yet the entire prison was in panic. Systems had failed. Doors had unlocked. Lights had gone dark. And somehow, he was the only calm one. She sat on her small bed, staring at the memory stone he had returned to her. It still glowed faintly with her childhood recordings, her brother's laughter, her mother's old songs. How did he know it was important to her? Why didn't he crush it? Why care? By morning, she couldn't stay away. She wrapped herself in her cloak and sneaked toward the holding block again. The guards were still nervous, pacing, double-checking security. One even whispered, "Maybe he can control the machines." When Vera reached his cell, she stood in silence. Mason was awake, sitting with his back against the wall, staring at something she couldn't see. "You not escape," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You could." He looked up, eyes calm. "I didn't want to," he replied. "Not yet." "Why?" she asked, stepping a little closer. "Why stay when you could run?" Mason shrugged. "Sometimes running makes you a fugitive, but waiting makes you a message." She didn't understand everything, but his words stayed in her mind like seeds. He wasn't like anyone she'd met, not her people, not even the elders. He didn't shout to be heard. He spoke quietly, and yet every word stuck like truth. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Mason asked, "Do you know why they fear me?" "Because you human," she said. "You dangerous?" He smiled, but there was sadness in it. Dangerous is just a word, a tool used by those in power. They call me dangerous, so you don't listen to me. Vera blinked, unsure how to answer. "Do you know what I saw when I first came here?" he asked, looking through the glass. "Your world, your towers, your sky, your people," I thought. "Maybe this place could be better than mine. Maybe your kind was wiser." She tilted her head. "Better than Earth." He laughed softly. "Earth is complicated, beautiful, but broken. We've made mistakes, many, but we learn, we fight for change. Here, I see the same mistakes happening again." Vera lowered her eyes. She knew what he meant. Her world looked shiny from above, but inside, it was full of secrets, dark ones. "Why you tell me this?" she asked. "I just girl." "Exactly," he said. "You're young. You haven't decided what kind of person you'll be. If you hear the truth now, maybe you'll choose better." Vera didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not like a child, but like someone who mattered. She looked at him, really looked. There was something in his eyes, not fear, not anger, something stronger, something steady. She leaned a bit closer to the glass. "Did you break the systems? The lights? The drones?" Mason didn't lie. "Yes," he said. "But I didn't do it to escape. I did it to test their fear. They want to see me angry. They want to say, 'See, the human is dangerous.' But I won't give them that." Vera stepped back slowly. "But they'll hurt you more." She said, "Punish you." "Maybe," Mason said. "But fear only works when it's shared, if someone sees through it. It breaks." That night, Vera didn't go home right away. She sat outside the cell block, thinking. She remembered the old stories her brother used to tell. Humans were beasts, monsters, destroyers of worlds. But Mason didn't destroy anything. He sat behind glass and told stories, asked questions, and gave back what wasn't his. He made systems crash without touching a wire. He smiled without reason, and yet the guards were afraid of him. Who was the real monster? Suddenly, she heard footsteps, guards, coming quickly. Talking in low voices, they didn't see her, but she listened carefully. Orders just came. One said, the council wants to move the human, somewhere deeper. Offer cord. What if he resists? The other asked, then we'll make an example out of him. They walked away, but their words stayed behind. Cold and sharp, Vera stood frozen. They were planning something. Something bad. She looked back at the cell. Mason was still inside, head resting against the wall. Eyes closed like he was dreaming. She knew now, he wasn't the monster, but maybe. He was the only one who could stop the real ones. And maybe, just maybe, she could help him do it. The lights were brighter the next morning. Too bright, like they wanted to hide something. The guards didn't speak much, their faces stiff, their movements sharp. And Vera knew something had changed. She watched from behind a metal pillar. As they entered the human cell, no weapons, no shouting, just cold silence and a small silver cube, glowing blue. Mason didn't resist. He stood quietly. Arms loose, eyes steady. One guard pressed the cube to his neck. A flash of light, and then darkness. Vera covered her mouth to stop from crying out. She knew what the cube did. It wasn't for pain. It was for control. The cube shut down a body, not the mind. The prisoner stays awake, feels everything, but can't move, can't speak. They dragged him out like a broken machine, and Vera followed. Her steps soft, heart pounding. Not toward the cells, but the hidden labs beneath the tower. She had never been down there. Only the scientists went there. The ones who didn't smile. The ones who never left during storms. The ones who believed knowledge was more important than kindness. Vera crept through narrow vents. Crawling like a shadow, below, behind the glass walls, she saw Mason lying on a cold table, arms locked. Eyes open but silent, around him, machines beeped and blinked. 3 alien scientists circled the table, their voices low and sharp. The readings are unstable. One said, he shouldn't be resisting this much. He's not, said the second. That's what's strange. His body is calm, but his brain is too quiet. Maybe he knows we're watching, said the third. Maybe he's watching us back. They laughed, but Vera didn't. She didn't even blink. She finally understood this wasn't a prison. This was an experiment. Mason wasn't caught by accident. He was brought here, studied, tested like a wild animal. And the guards, the alarms, the food, all part of the test. She leaned closer to the vent, watching his face. He wasn't afraid, even paralyzed. He looked focused, as if his mind was walking somewhere far away. One of the scientists tapped a screen. Begin phase 2, he said. A large device unfolded above Mason's head, dozens of tiny needles, like silver spider legs. They lowered slowly. Toward his skull, Vera couldn't breathe. Her hands gripped the vent bars, trembling. What were they trying to find in his brain? Mason's eyes didn't blink, but they shifted slightly toward the vent. He saw her somehow, and for a brief second, she saw something in his eyes. Not fear, not pain, but trust. He was telling her something without words. It's okay. Keep watching. Then the needles touched his skin. The lights flickered, screens glitched, and a loud humming sound filled the lab. The scientists jumped back, confused, shouting, "Shut it down." One yelled, "System is rejecting input." Another shouted, "He's doing this, not the machine." The power went out. Only red backup lights remained. Machines froze. Doors locked themselves. Screens turned to static. Vera ducked back into the shadows. Heart racing. He wasn't just resisting. He was fighting back from the inside. When the lights returned, Mason was still on the table, but every scientist looked pale and shaken. "No subject has done that before," one whispered. This isn't just biology, said another. He's different. They turned away to talk in hushed voices. Vera took her chance and crawled quickly back up the vents. Out of the lab and into the night air. She didn't go home. She sat on the cold steps near the watchtower, staring at the stars. So many lies had filled her world about humans, about her own people. But the biggest lie was this, that her world was the smart one. She remembered Mason's words. Sometimes running makes you a fugitive, but waiting makes you a message. He wasn't just waiting, he was learning, reading their systems, understanding their tech, even locked up, even controlled. He was in control. Vera made her choice that night. She would no longer just watch. She would act. The next morning, she returned to the lab entrance. In her hands, a stolen access card from her father, a council worker, in her pocket, a food capsule wrapped in cloth, and in her heart, a decision she could not turn back from. Mason was not the monster in this story. He was the test they never expected to fail, and she was ready to help him pass it. Asterisk, the rain returned 3 nights later. But this time, it didn't sing. It slammed against the glass towers like a warning. Vera stood outside the lab entrance. Her cloak soaked, her heart steady, the stolen access card burned in her pocket. She had walked past 3 guards, 4 cameras, and 1 locked gate. Each step felt heavier, not with fear, but with purpose. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do, but she knew why she was doing it. The lie was too big to ignore now. The truth too dangerous to leave behind bars. Inside the lab, Mason was back in his glass cell. His body carried bruises. His face carried silence. But when he saw Vera, something lit in his eyes. Not surprise, but calm recognition. She pressed the card to the outer lock and slid through the shadows. No alarms. No sensors. She had timed her visit perfectly. Just as the shift guards rotated, her small size made her almost invisible. When she reached the cell, she crouched beside the control panel. Mason leaned forward slowly and spoke low. "You shouldn't be here." Vera didn't look at him. She opened a panel, took out 3 wires, and connected a small pulse tool. "I know," she whispered, "but I am." He watched her work, surprised. "You're not just a curious girl anymore," he said. "I was never just curious." She replied, "I was scared." "Now?" he asked. "Now I'm both." A soft click echoed, and the cell door opened 1 inch. Not enough to slip through, but enough to say, "It's possible." Vera looked up, eyes sharp. "I can't free you yet. If I open the door, everything will lock down. Then why come?" Mason asked to plan, she said, to build something stronger than escape. Mason sat back, nodding slowly. "What do you need?" "Maps," she replied. "Blueprints, vents, tunnels, system nodes." He smiled, just a little, already done. He stood and reached into the side of his boot, pulling out a tiny folded screen. Old, cracked, but working. "I've been building this with memory. Every step they walk me through, every hallway, every exit." Vera took it. Hands shaking, she spread it across the ground, her eyes wide with wonder. "You remember all this?" "Had nothing else to do," he said, "except think." She traced a red-marked path from the labs to the hangar bay. Then a blue line, deeper underground. Toward the control core. "What's this line?" She asked. "That," Mason said softly, "is how we shut it all down." Vera stared at him. "You don't want to escape?" "No," he said. "I want to end this." She thought for a moment, then pointed to a node marked Main Power Access. "My uncle works there. He wears blue." Mason nodded. "If you can get me his pass ID, can write a loop, it will freeze the cameras long enough for us to move." "What about the guards?" she asked. "We'll let them chase the wrong shadows," he replied, "but we need help." "I've been talking to the others. quietly, others. Vera blinked. You mean? The other prisoners. Yes, Mason said. Some are scared. But not all. Some remember Earth. Some owe their freedom to humans. They've been pretending to be weak, just like me. Vera felt a strange chill, not fear, but excitement. This was bigger than just her and him now. It was becoming something else. We'll need noise, she said. Something loud. Something big. I have that covered, he replied. You've seen the drones? Yes. The flying ones? She asked. They're programmed to respond to panic. Mason said, if I trigger false signals across the sectors, they'll swarm randomly. The system will think there's a riot. Vera nodded slowly. And while they deal with the chaos, we walk right out, Mason finished. Or we walk right in to the core. She looked at him. Are you sure this will work? No, he said, smiling, but I'm sure it's the right thing to try. They spent the next hour working in silence. She fed him a food capsule wrapped in cloth. He gave her a transmitter made from stolen lab parts. He showed her the weak points in the walls. She marked the timing of guard routes together. They weren't just planning an escape. They were planning a message. When she finally left, she whispered one last thing. They're going to transfer you again. I heard them. Then we moved before that, he said. Next rain, same time, she nodded and vanished into the shadows. That night, the rain returned, and it didn't sing, it roared, like something had finally awakened. Vera's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Even as she moved quietly through the empty corridor, her fingers twitched like broken wires. The floor beneath her boots hummed with hidden energy. Every step closer to the control core made her feel smaller, but she kept walking. Mason had warned her the moment she stepped into this path, there was no turning back. She had nodded then, full of fire and courage. Now, standing alone with her uncle's stolen passband and a small transmitter in her pocket, she felt the weight of her decision. Back at the lab, the guards were preparing for the transfer. They had orders to move the human at dawn. But Vera knew something they didn't. He wouldn't be there if the plan worked. Mason would be gone by then. Not just free, but inside the system, rewriting the map of their world. She reached the outer door of the core chamber. The scanner blinked red, waiting for authorization. Vera swallowed hard, took a breath, and pressed the stolen passband to the pad. Green light, door opened. She stepped inside. The core room was cold and quiet. A single console sat at the center. Humming with life, Vera approached it like it might bite from her pocket. She pulled the transmitter Mason had built. 3 pieces of broken lab tech melted into one strange tool. She placed it beside the console, tapped the corner, and waited. A small blue light blinked once, twice, then steady. The signal was sent. That meant Mason had received it, somewhere behind those thick walls. Behind those guards and scanners and locked doors, Mason knew it was time. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed through the chamber speakers. Unauthorized signal detected in Sector 9. All security staff to intercept. Target is a child female. Vera froze. They had found her. She grabbed the transmitter, turned to run. But the door slammed shut behind her. Steel walls locked into place. She was trapped. Then another voice filled the room. This one, calm, deep, familiar. Vera, Mason said. Don't panic. I'm here. Her heart leaped. Mason? Where are you? In the system, he replied, watching every door, every signal. You triggered them early. But that's okay. Can you hear me clearly? Yes, she said. But I'm locked in. I know, he answered. They'll come soon. You have 2 choices, Vera. You can give them the transmitter and walk out. Tell them I tricked you, that you were scared. They'll believe you. What's the second choice? She asked, though she already knew. You wait just 5 minutes, Mason said, and I'll override the door. But if you wait, they'll know you helped me. They'll never let you go back to the life you had. Silence filled the chamber. Vera's hands stopped shaking. Not because she wasn't scared, but because now she understood why she was scared. All her life, she had followed the rules. She believed what they told her. Humans were dangerous. Questions were weakness, and safety was silence. But Mason had never forced her to choose. He had never demanded anything. He had only given truth, kindness, trust, and now? A choice footsteps echoed outside the door. They were coming fast. She had maybe 30 seconds left. She looked at the transmitter in her hand, then at the door, then at the console, still humming quietly. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. Open the core. No answer came, but the console blinked green. And the door on the far wall slid open. Vera ran through it. Lights flashed red above her. But she didn't slow down. Down the stairs, through the tunnel, past 2 old broken drones. And then she saw him, Mason, standing beside a junction. Box wires spread around him like a nest. He was no longer in chains. His face was bruised. But his eyes were fire. "You really came," he said, smiling. "So did you," she replied, panting. He held out a cable. "One last wire. You connect this. We own the core." She didn't hesitate. She grabbed it, locked it into place. And the lights across the entire facility shut off, just for 3 seconds. Just enough. When they returned, every door was open, every scanner silent. The drones hovered, confused, and the guards shouted without answers. "You still want to escape?" she asked. Mason shook his head. "No. I want them to know they locked up the wrong species." Behind them, alarms screamed. Ahead of them, the hangar door opened wide. It wasn't freedom yet. But it was the beginning of something bigger, and Vera had chosen it, not because she had to, but because it was right. The hangar doors opened with a deep, shaking roar, for the first time in years. Wind touched Mason's face. It wasn't earth wind, it smelled of metal and chemicals. But it was freedom, even if just for a moment. Vera stood beside him, her hair tangled, her cloak torn. But her eyes were bright, alive. She had made her choice, and now they were running with it. Behind them, alarms screamed louder than ever. Flashing red lights chased them down every hallway, but they were already past the point of turning back. As they entered the hangar, the chaos had already begun. Drones zipped in the air, scanning for targets. But many guards were confused. The command systems had been disrupted. Prison doors across the facility had opened. Not all the prisoners ran. But the ones who did, they didn't run alone. "They're coming," Vera said. Glancing back, "I know," Mason replied, pulling her behind a cargo crate. "We need a ship. There." Vera pointed at a small scout vessel in the corner. Old, unguarded. With half its panels open, maybe under repair, but better than nothing. They ran toward it, dodging broken crates and flickering lights. 2 guards spotted them and raised their weapons. Vera froze, but Mason didn't. He moved fast, picked up a pipe from the ground, and threw it like a spear. It hit one guard square in the chest, knocking him over. The second tried to shoot, but a sudden blast from above knocked him down. A tall figure dropped from the catwalk. Another prisoner, not human, not alien like Vera. One of the quiet ones Mason had spoken to. His skin was deep gray, eyes glowing amber. "You said we would rise," the prisoner said to Mason. "I am ready." Mason nodded. "Then help us fly inside the scout ship." Vera jumped into the front seat. She had never flown anything before, but her uncle had trained pilots. She remembered just enough. The engine stuttered, groaned, then rumbled to life. Dust blew across the hangar floor, and the ship rose a few feet. "We can't leave yet," Mason said, gripping the side rail. "There are still others trapped in deeper labs." They don't even know the doors are open. Vera looked at him. You want to go back in? He looked toward the control tower, where fire was starting to rise. I didn't start this to run, she said. I started it to end the fear. Another alarm began to sound different from the others. A warning, a countdown there. Going to purge the lower levels, Vera whispered, horrified, cleanse mode. Exactly, Mason said. They're going to kill everyone still inside. The gray prisoner looked at them both. Then we must split. I will take this ship and those who can fight. You go down and stop the purge, Mason agreed, quickly shaking the alien's hand. I trust you, he said. No. The alien replied, you inspired me. Vera and Mason jumped off the rising ship and ran back into the smoke, through broken halls, past fallen guards. The world they once thought unshakable was falling apart, and they were running straight into its heart, at the core control room. The cleansing protocol had already begun. Vera slammed her hand on the override pad. Nothing. The system had gone fully automatic. It's locked, she said, panicking. We're too late. No, Mason said, pulling open the back of the console. We're not too late. We just need to speak the right language. He connected 2 wires from the broken transmitter he still carried, typed fast, his fingers. Flying like memory, not thought. Lines of code flickered across the screen. Vera watched, amazed. How do you know all this? Earth taught me, he said. Not the governments, not the rich. The broken ones, the rebels, the fighters who fix things with trash. The countdown reached the final minute. Gas lines activated. Walls began to close, but just before it reached 0, Mason hit one last key. The system stopped, everything stopped. The walls reopened, the gas lines shut off, and a message appeared on every screen in the facility. We are not your experiment. We are your reckoning, in the deepest labs. Prisoners looked up at the screens. Some cheered, some cried. One whispered, the human did it. Back in the hangar, the scout ship circled overhead. Other ships had joined it, stolen, broken. Repurposed, the sky above the prison was no longer silent. It was filled with hope, loud, buzzing, angry hope. Mason stepped into the open walkway, staring at the rising ships. Vera came up beside him, breathless. This is a rebellion now. She said, no. Mason replied, this is a beginning. Behind them, flames climbed the towers. In front of them, stars waited, and somewhere beyond, the rest of the galaxy was still sleeping, still believing humans were just monsters, but soon they would learn the truth was far more dangerous. Years later, the tower ruins were covered in moss and silence. Vines wrapped around the broken walls. Wind whispered through cracked steel. The prison that once held screams now held only memory. A young alien girl walked across the overgrown path, holding her grandmother's hand. Her eyes were wide with curiosity, her voice soft but eager. Is it true, grandmother? She asked. You were here when the human came? The older woman stopped, her cloak brushing the tall grass. She looked up at the faded sky, the same sky that once burned with rebellion. Yes, she said. I was here, and yes, I met the human. The girl's eyes sparkled, but weren't. You afraid? Didn't he try to eat you? The woman smiled gently. Everyone expected him to, even I. She knelt beside a rusted control panel half buried in dirt. This place used to be full of fear. She said, we were taught that humans were beasts, monsters, wild things from a broken world. Was that true? The girl asked, frowning. No. The woman said softly, that was never true. The girl sat on the ground, pulling her knees close. Then what was he like? The older woman paused, remembering. She remembered the day she dropped her memory. Stone, the way he had handed it back, the way he had smiled through the glass. The way he had changed her world, not with weapons, but with words. He was calm, she said, and kind. He didn't shout, he didn't bite, he didn't break anything, but he broke the prison. The girl said, yes, the woman nodded, but not with anger. He broke it by refusing to be what they wanted him to be, by showing us who we really were. The girl looked around the ruins again. So, he was a hero. The woman didn't answer right away. She stood and walked toward a metal plate half covered in moss. She brushed it clean, and beneath it, faded but still clear, were the words, "We do not fear the stars. We teach them to fear us. With hope." That's what he gave us, she said. Hope. He made us question our stories. He made us ask, what if we were wrong? The girl stood beside her, looking up. Did he go back to Earth? No. The woman replied, he stayed, not in this place. But in others, he helped rebuild cities, free others like him. He taught, he listened, he protected. The girl was quiet for a long time. Then she asked the one question that had been growing inside her since they arrived. Why did he help you? The woman turned, surprised. No one's ever asked me that, she said. Most ask what he did, or how he escaped. But you asked why, and that's the most human question of all. The girl waited for the answer. The woman took her hand and led her toward a stone bench once part of a watchtower's base. I asked him that once, she said, when we stood in the control core, systems falling around us. I said, why are you risking so much? Why not just escape and forget us? And do you know what he said? The girl shook her head slowly. The woman smiled. Not with her mouth, but with her whole heart. He said, because someone once gave me a chance. And I remember what it felt like to be saved, even if it was just by one person. Even if it didn't last long, I carry that. The girl looked at the rusted walls. Do you miss him? Every day, the woman said, but not because he left. I miss what he showed us. That kindness is not weakness. That strength is not measured by fists. And that monsters aren't born. They're taught, and they can be unlearned. Far above, 3 scout ships passed quietly through the clouds, each painted with the same symbol, a simple circle with a single star in its center. The mark of the Unity Accord, a peace born from rebellion, a future sparked by one prisoner who never raised his voice. The girl turned to her grandmother once more. What was his name? The woman closed her eyes. Mason, she said. His name was Mason. The wind moved through the ruins like breath, and the towers, though broken, stood tall in silence. Mason was gone now, but his legacy remained, not in stone or statues, but in hearts, in minds, in the truth that had once been too dangerous to speak. The truth about humans, not beasts, not monsters, but something far more powerful, something that could forgive, something that could rise without crushing others, something that could change a world by simply showing what it means to care.